A billionaire CEO
Don't
was
sign that, Mr.
seconds
Harrison.
away from
Look at
signing the
clause
deal
3B.
of his career.
What?
Papers
This
worth
changes
billions, a handshake that would crown him king of Wall Street. The room was filled with champagne glasses and forced laughter, his best friend grinning at the head of the table, his pen poised above the dotted line. And yet, the moment everything seemed sealed, a quiet voice slipped through the noise. Not from an executive, not from a lawyer, but from the janitor pushing her cart across the marble floor. Don't sign. It's a trap. One whisper shattered 15 years of trust and set fire to everything he thought he knew. But why would a cleaning lady risk her job to save a man who barely knew her name? And what would you do if the only person telling you the truth was the last one you expected? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Ethan Brooks sat at the head of the gleaming oak table on the 50th floor of a Manhattan tower, his signature about to deliver his company into the arms of TitanCorp. The city glowed beneath them, but inside the room, all eyes were fixed on the contract. Miles Carter, his partner since college, leaned in with a reassuring smile. "It's time, Ethan. Let's make history." Across the table, Titan's lawyers shuffled papers, waiting for the ink. The air hummed with expectation. Ethan's hand tightened on the pen. The world narrowed to the single stroke that would change his life. That's when Maya Lopez pushed her cart through the door, head bowed in deference, murmuring apologies for interrupting. No one cared. They were too busy celebrating early victories. She bent near Ethan's chair, straightened the trash bag, then angled her lips close enough for only him to hear. "Don't sign. It's a trap." The words struck like ice water down his spine. The pen slipped, tapping the table with a hollow sound. He froze, staring at the woman as she moved away, face unreadable, pushing her cart toward the door as if nothing had happened. Miles's voice cut through the tension, low and prodding. "Ethan, everything all right?" Another executive frowned, impatient. "Are we ready?" Ethan's gaze flicked from the contract to his friend's smile, then to the woman's retreating figure. The room blurred. His voice came out firm, unexpected even to himself. "I need 5 minutes." Ethan's footsteps echoed sharply as he left the boardroom, the weight of every stare pressing against his back. The folder with billions on the line remained unopened, and his best friend's narrowed eyes burned into him as he walked out. Down the hall, Maya was pushing her cart as though nothing had happened, but her shoulders tensed when she heard him call out, "You, with me, now!" His voice was firm, urgent, cutting through the sterile quiet. She froze, her fingers gripping the cart handle, then slowly nodded. Without another word, Ethan led her into a narrow break room, the hum of a vending machine filling the silence. He closed the door behind them with a thud. The air tightened between them. His eyes locked onto hers, hard and demanding. "Explain, right now, and you better convince me you're not completely insane for stopping me like that." Maya stood rigid, a trash bag still in her hand, her voice low but steady. "I know how it sounds, but they're setting you up." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Who?" She swallowed, then forced the words out. "TitanCorp and Miles." The name of his oldest friend tasted like poison in her mouth. "I have overheard conversations, things I wasn't supposed to hear. They're using that contract to bury your company under debts you never saw coming. You sign it, you hand them everything." Ethan let out a breathless laugh, sharp with disbelief, yet the flicker in his eyes betrayed unease. "Do you have any proof?" "I do," she said quickly, almost desperately. "Documents, screenshots, recordings. Tonight, 7 o'clock. I'll bring it all here." He stepped closer, his voice dropping, but his glare unyielding. "If this is some conspiracy theory, if you're lying, you're done. Fired on the spot." Maya's lips pressed together, but she didn't flinch. "I understand, but if I stay silent and you lose everything, I'll never forgive myself."
Ethan turned away, staring at his reflection in the glass wall. New York stretched out beneath them, glittering, alive. But for the first time in years, his world felt fragile. This woman had nothing to gain, everything to lose, yet she had spoken anyway. His voice softened, just slightly. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. She nodded once, then left the room with quiet steps, the cartwheels squeaking against the tiles, as though nothing had happened.
The next morning, Ethan arrived earlier than anyone else, the weight of last night still pressing on his chest. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, Maya's voice returned, steady, unshakable. "They're setting you up." He walked into human resources, masking the storm beneath his calm tone. "I need to see the file for Maya Lopez." The HR manager raised a brow. "The janitor?" Ethan forced a smile. "Routine check." A thin folder slid across the desk. He opened it, and his eyes froze on the first page. Bachelor's degree in finance from NYU, 2 years consulting at Deloitte, specialization in corporate strategy. His breath caught. What was a woman with those credentials doing scrubbing floors at his company? By noon, he found her on the 12th floor, polishing windows, the skyline of Manhattan gleaming behind her. "Maya," he called, his voice softer than the night before. She turned, surprise flickering in her eyes. "Did you find out more about them?" He held her gaze. "Actually, I found out about you." He crossed his arms, the words sharp but laced with curiosity. "NYU? Deloitte? Corporate finance? Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" The cloth slipped from her hand. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "Because none of it matters here. To everyone in this building, I'm just the cleaning lady." Ethan stepped closer. "With that resume, you could be leading projects, running teams." Her laugh was bitter. "I tried. At Deloitte, I was always not quite the right fit. Too direct, too Latina. They never said it, but I heard it in every excuse." Her eyes darkened. "And when they pushed me out, my sister needed surgery. I took the only job that gave us insurance. That's why I'm here." The room went quiet, only the hum of the city below. Ethan's chest tightened. "Your sister?" "Sophia, 22, congenital heart defect, $250,000 to replace a failing valve." Her voice cracked, but she held his gaze. "This job keeps her alive." For a moment, Ethan forgot about contracts and boardrooms. He saw the woman in front of him, her dignity stitched together with sacrifice. He lowered his voice. "And that's why you recognize the fraud, the clauses, the numbers." Maya nodded, eyes wet but unbroken. "I couldn't stand by and watch them destroy you the way they destroyed me. And you—" She hesitated, then whispered, "You treat people differently, with respect. That's why I spoke." Ethan swallowed hard, the glass city around them suddenly fragile. For the first time, the betrayal of his oldest friend wasn't the only truth haunting him. The greater truth stood right in front of him, holding a rag in his hand, daring him to see her for who she really was.
That afternoon, an announcement crackled through the building's intercom. "All employees report to the main auditorium immediately for an urgent safety meeting." The sudden command rippled across every floor, pulling workers from desks and break rooms alike. Maya froze where she stood, a mop still in her hands. She already knew this wasn't about safety. Her heart thudded against her ribs, but she squared her shoulders and walked toward the elevator with the same calm steps as everyone else. The auditorium filled with hundreds of voices buzzing with confusion. Ethan sat in the front row, his tie loosened, unease etched across his face. He hadn't been told the reason for this meeting either. He looked up when Maya entered from the back, their eyes locking for a fleeting second. She gave nothing away, though her pulse was racing. Then Miles strode onto the stage with a manila folder tucked under his arm. His expression was grave, his voice amplified and heavy with false authority. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. Unfortunately, I must address a breach of trust inside our company." A nervous murmur swept through the crowd. Ethan's brows drew together, suspicion growing in his chest. Miles paused just long enough for silence to sharpen. "Yesterday, confidential documents were stolen and photographed. After an internal investigation, we've identified the culprit." His gaze swept the room before landing squarely on Maya. "Maya Lopez, step forward." Whispers erupted instantly. Heads turned toward the young woman standing at the back wall. Some eyes held pity, others judgment. Maya's legs felt like lead, but she refused to bow. She walked the long aisle, each step measured, her chin lifted despite the sting of tears burning her eyes. On stage, Miles opened the folder and held up printed photos. "Here is proof. Images of confidential contracts found on her phone and security footage showing her entering executive offices outside her assigned hours." He let the words drip with venom. "Corporate espionage is a federal crime, yet out of mercy, we offer termination in place of prosecution." Mai's voice broke through the tense air. "I wasn't stealing. I was protecting." "Protecting what?" Miles cut her off, smirking. "Your own interests?" The crowd rustled with unease. She turned desperately toward Ethan. "You know I'm telling the truth. You saw the evidence." For a moment, Ethan rose halfway from his chair, his lips parting. But then, under the weight of Miles's stare and the expectant eyes of the entire company, he faltered. His voice came out flat, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, Maya. The evidence is clear." Her heart shattered, but her voice steadied with defiance. "When you find out the truth, remember, you had the chance to stand up today, and you chose silence." The guards took her by the arms. She shook them off, walking out on her own, head high as the room buzzed with shock. Behind her, Ethan sank into his chair, guilt gnawing at him, knowing he had just betrayed the one person brave enough to speak the truth.
That night, Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, sleep nowhere near him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya being dragged from the auditorium, her voice cutting through the silence. "You had the chance to stand up today, and you chose silence." The words echoed like a verdict. By 3 in the morning, he gave up. He pulled on his jacket, drove through the empty Manhattan streets, and swiped his card into the glass tower that felt colder than ever. The building was nearly deserted, only a pair of security guards at the front desk. Ethan's footsteps echoed as he climbed to the executive floor. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and began to dig. He knew Maya's warnings weren't the desperate lies Miles had painted them to be. She had spoken with too much clarity, too much knowledge. He typed with fevered precision, scanning through every digital folder, every spreadsheet attached to the merger. Hours passed. At first, everything looked ordinary, just as TitanCorp's lawyers had insisted. But then, buried deep in the contract, he noticed something. An obscure reference to Addendum X. His pulse quickened. He had never seen this file. He searched the system again, digging through encrypted folders, until at last, there it was. Post-merger asset distribution. When the document opened, Ethan's stomach dropped. 80% of Brooks Technologies' assets would be transferred to a shell company called Iron Gate Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. He scrolled further and froze. The listed shareholders? Miles Carter and Claire Donovan. His best friend and the woman who once claimed to love him. His hand shook as he read the fine print again and again, but the betrayal was undeniable. He pressed print, the whir of the machine loud in the empty office. He wasn't finished. Logging into the company's financial records, he traced recent transactions. His chest tightened as the truth unfolded. $25 million had already been siphoned off, disguised as pre-merger expenses, rerouted into accounts under Miles's name. He leaned back in his chair, the city lights bleeding through the glass behind him. His oldest friend had been building a knife behind his back for years, and when it was ready, he would have driven it straight into his chest. Ethan gathered the papers into a neat stack, his jaw clenched, rage simmering beneath his calm. For the first time in his life, he truly saw Miles, not as a friend, not as a partner, but as a predator who had mistaken loyalty for weakness. And in that moment, Ethan understood something with absolute clarity. Maya had been right all along.
By dawn, Ethan was still at his desk, eyes bloodshot, papers scattered like debris from an explosion. The evidence was undeniable. Miles and Claire had woven a perfect trap. But the weight pressing hardest on his chest wasn't the betrayal, it was Maya. He had let her be humiliated, tossed aside in front of the entire company when she had been the only one fighting for him. Before the sun fully rose, he grabbed the files, shoved them into a folder, and drove across the river to Brooklyn. The streets were narrow, cracked, lined with brick apartments that had seen better decades. He parked in front of a weather-worn building and climbed the creaking stairs to apartment 3B. When the door opened, Maya stood there, eyes rimmed red, her face still swollen from sleeplessness. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then her voice, cold and sharp, "What do you want?" "I know the truth now," Ethan said, holding up the folder. "Miles and Claire, the shell company, the money, you were right about everything." Her laugh was bitter, hollow. "That must feel convenient. You find proof after you stood there and let them destroy me." She started to close the door, but he pressed his hand against it. "Please, just 5 minutes. I need to explain." From deeper inside the apartment, a weak voice called, "Maya, who is it?" A young woman stepped into view, pale, fragile, moving slowly as though each step cost her strength. Maya's tone softened instantly. "Sophia, go rest." Then to Ethan, she hissed, "You should leave." But Sophia tilted her head curiously. "Are you Mr. Brooks? My sister talks about you." Ethan's chest tightened. "Yes, and I'm sorry. For everything." Her jaw clenched, but she guided her sister back to the bedroom. Before returning, "Now you've seen enough. Leave us alone." Ethan's voice cracked with urgency. "How much? The surgery? How much does it cost?" Maya's eyes burned. $250,000, but don't you dare. I don't want your pity. I don't want your money." "It isn't pity," Ethan said, stepping closer, his voice low, raw. "It's responsibility. I failed you when you needed me most. I won't fail you again." Her face hardened, though her hands trembled. "You already did." She pulled the door wide, motioning him to leave. "We don't want your help." The door slammed shut, leaving Ethan in the dim hallway, his heart heavier than ever. He knew she wouldn't accept his money directly, but as he walked back down the stairs, one thought burned clear. He would find another way to save her sister's life, whether Maya wanted him to or not.
2 days later, the neon lights of a Brooklyn cafe glowed against the evening rain. Ethan sat alone at a corner table, a folder of documents beside his untouched coffee. His heart pounded every time the door opened, until finally Maya walked in. She wore a plain coat, her hair tied back, but her presence filled the room with quiet strength. She didn't smile. She slid into the chair across from him, her voice clipped. "This better be good." Ethan leaned forward, lowering his tone. "I've gathered everything. The contracts, the wire transfers, the Cayman accounts. It's worse than we thought. Miles and Claire plan to strip the company bare within 48 hours. He opened the folder, spreading the pages like cards on a table. Maya scanned them, her eyes widening as she read. Her hand trembled, but her voice stayed firm. They planned all this under your nose, and you still hesitate to fight them? Ethan's jaw tightened. Not anymore, but I can't do this alone. I need you. Maya looked at him, searching for a trace of the man who had betrayed her with silence. Why me? Because you're the only one who saw it before anyone else. Because you understand these contracts better than half the board. And because... He paused, struggling with words that weighed too much. Because you risked everything to save me when I didn't deserve it. She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. You want me to walk back into that building after what they did? I don't want you as a janitor, Ethan said quietly. I want you as vice president of operations, with me, with authority, with the power to stand up to them. Maya's lips parted in shock, a disbelieving laugh escaping her. Vice president? I'm barely holding my life together. You're exactly what this company needs. Smart, brave, honest, and not afraid to speak when everyone else stays quiet. The cafe's noise seemed to fade as the two of them locked eyes. For the first time, Ethan let the truth show, his regret, his respect, something deeper flickering beneath. Maya swallowed hard, her voice unsteady. And if I say yes, what happens when Miles finds out? Then we fight. Together. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, almost against her own will, Maya reached across the table, brushing his hand with hers. The touch was brief, electric, but it lingered like a promise. She exhaled. All right, one chance, Ethan. Don't waste it. And for the first time in days, he allowed himself to believe they might actually win. The next morning, Ethan's office felt like a cage. He hadn't slept, his mind rehearsing every detail of the plan he and Maya had mapped out. But before he could even reach for the phone, the door swung open without a knock. Miles stepped inside, his tailored suit sharp, his smile sharper. Claire followed, heels clicking against the polished floor, her perfume filling the space like poison. Ethan's gut clenched. He tried to mask it, but they had come hunting. Miles closed the door behind him and dropped into a chair without asking. You've been busy, Ethan, he said smoothly, crossing one leg over the other. Late nights at the office? Strange files accessed? Care to explain? Claire perched on the edge of his desk, sliding a folder onto the mahogany surface. Or should we just cut the pleasantries? Ethan's pulse quickened, but he forced calm. What exactly are you accusing me of? Claire opened the folder, fanning out photographs across the desk. Ethan's stomach dropped. Images of him entering Maya's apartment building, sitting with her at the cafe, their hands brushing, a kiss under the glow of a street lamp. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. You've been very involved with an employee, a disgraced one at that. That's none of your business, Ethan shot back, his tone hard. Oh, but it is, Claire purred, especially when you've been moving company funds to pay for her sister's surgery. Ethan froze. How do you... Miles smirked. You really thought we wouldn't notice 250 grand vanishing? It's sloppy, Ethan. You always were too sentimental. His fists clenched, anger boiling beneath the surface. That donation wasn't company money. Miles ignored him, his grin turning cruel. Here's how this works. You're going to cancel the board meeting. You're going to sign the Titan contract today, and you're going to destroy every shred of evidence you think you've gathered. And if I don't, Ethan asked, his voice razor thin. Claire leaned closer, whispering like a blade against skin. Then Maya and her sick little sister might find life very difficult. Accidents happen. Jobs disappear. Insurance evaporates. Do you really want their blood on your conscience? Silence crushed the room. Ethan's jaw locked, his chest burning with rage he couldn't unleash. Miles patted the folder of photographs, standing with a mocking smile. 1 hour, Ethan. choose wisely. When the door clicked shut behind them, Ethan sagged against his chair, the folder of lies glaring up at him. His phone buzzed on the desk, a text from Maya. "Are we still on for the meeting?" His hand trembled as he typed back a single word. Canceled. That night, the skyscraper was nearly empty, its windows glowing faintly against the New York skyline. Maya slipped through the service entrance with her hood pulled low, her badge still working, though she hadn't been on payroll for days. She moved like she had 100 times before, silent, invisible, the ghost of the building's forgotten floors. But tonight, she wasn't cleaning. Tonight, she was hunting. She climbed the service stairs to the executive level, her pulse hammering in her ears. Miles's office door loomed at the end of the hall. She tried the handle. Unlocked. Of course, men like him never believed anyone would dare. Inside, the room reeked of arrogance. Leather chairs, crystal decanter half full of scotch, a photograph of him shaking hands with Ethan, now bitterly ironic. Maya slipped on gloves and began rifling through drawers. What she found turned her stomach cold. Draft contracts with Ethan's forged signature, altered bank records stamped with Titan's logo, surveillance photos of herself and Sophia, grainy but unmistakable, with notes scrawled in Miles's handwriting. Pressure point, secondary target. Maya's breath caught. He had planned not just to ruin Ethan, but to destroy her life completely. On the desk sat a sleek silver pen holder. She lifted it, heavier than it looked. Inside was a small digital recorder. She pressed play. Miles's voice filled the room, low and venomous. "If Ethan doesn't sign, we use Maya. Her sister is weak. One accident, and she's gone. That'll keep him quiet." Claire's laugh followed, sharp and cruel. "He'll fold. He always does." Maya's hand shook, but she copied every file, every recording, onto her phone. The evidence was damning, enough to bury them both. For the first time in days, a flicker of hope surged in her chest. She slipped out just as quietly, heart pounding as the elevator dinged somewhere down the hall. By dawn, she was standing outside Ethan's apartment. Her knuckles rapped against the door until he appeared, disheveled, eyes bloodshot. "Maya, what are you doing here?" She pushed past him, tossing the recorder onto his table. "I know why you canceled the meeting. Miles threatened you, didn't he?" Ethan's silence said everything. Maya pressed play, and Miles's threat bled into the air between them. Ethan sank into a chair, head in his hands, shame written across his face. But Maya's voice cut through his despair, steady and unyielding. "He made one mistake, Ethan. He recorded his own crimes. We have everything now, the contracts, the transfers, the threats. It's over, for them, but only if we move fast." Ethan lifted his eyes, searching hers, and for the first time, he let himself believe. Together, they just might win.
At 2 o'clock that afternoon, the boardroom was packed. Executives, lawyers, and TitanCorp representatives filled every seat, murmurs thick with anticipation. Miles and Claire sat in the front row, smiles stretched tight with arrogance. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his tie crisp, his hands steady, though his heart pounded like war drums. He cleared his throat. "Before we proceed with any merger, I have an announcement." A ripple of unease traveled the room. Then, to a collective gasp, the side door opened. Maya walked in, head high, no janitor's cart in sight, only a folder clutched in her hands. Ethan gestured toward her. "Meet our new Vice President of Operations, Maya Lopez." Laughter and whispers erupted. Miles shot to his feet, face flushed. "This is absurd!" Claire hissed beside him, but Ethan's voice cut sharp. "Sit down, Miles.
You'll have your turn. Maya stepped forward, her voice steady, echoing in the tense chamber. You all remember the day I was accused of espionage. Today, I will show you the truth. She placed documents on the projector. On screen appeared the first contract, the one everyone had seen, granting Ethan 65% control. Gasps turned to confusion as she flipped to the second version, the real one, slashing Ethan's control to 15%. The room erupted. Maya didn't flinch. That contract was a forgery. And here's where the money went. She displayed bank transfers, $25 million siphoned into Miles Carter's personal accounts. Murmurs turned to outrage. Miles's voice cracked as he shouted, "Lies! Fabrications!" But Maya raised a small silver recorder. She pressed play, and Miles's own voice filled the boardroom. If Ethan doesn't sign, we use Maya. One accident with her sister, and he'll fold. Claire's cruel laugh followed. The silence afterward was suffocating. Faces turned, hard with disbelief and betrayal. The TitanCorp delegate stood abruptly. We had no knowledge of this. Mr. Brooks, we withdraw our interest immediately. This was fraud. At the doorway, detectives entered, badges flashing. Miles Carter, Claire Donovan, you are under arrest for conspiracy, corporate fraud, and extortion. The officers cuffed them as Miles raged, spitting venom at Ethan. You'll regret this. You were nothing without me. Ethan met his eyes coldly. I'd rather have nothing than be you. Applause broke like thunder as Miles and Claire were dragged away. When the room cleared, Ethan turned to Maya, the weight of everything pressing down and lifting at once. You saved me, Maya. Not just the company. Me. She smiled softly. We saved each other. Weeks later, beneath the Brooklyn Bridge lights, Ethan dropped to one knee with a simple ring. Maya Lopez, will you marry me? Tears brimmed as she whispered, yes. The story that began with a whisper in a boardroom ended with a vow under the stars.